What is up guys, in this video I'm going to be breaking down all the differences between the RC N-1 controller that comes standard with most DJI drones and the DJI RC remote with the built-in screen to help you decide if the DJI RC is really worth the extra cost. And quick note, DJI doesn't pay me to make these comparisons. I bought both of these controllers myself, so there shouldn't be any bias. I'm just giving you my honest thoughts after having the RC N-1 for several years and then using the DJI RC for the past several months. So let's go ahead and dive right into the comparison. First up, we have price. The DJI RC comes in at $309 on its own, whereas the RC N-1 comes in at around $120, although you can't get it on its own from DJI, you'll have to get it from other resellers. Now, if you're going to get a drone bundled with either the basic RC N-1 or the DJI RC, you'll end up paying about $150 more for the DJI RC. So the RC N-1 wins on price. Next, we have size and weight. The DJI RC is slightly larger than the RC N-1 without a phone attached to it, which can make it more difficult to fit into the Fly More combo case with everything else, but surprisingly the DJI RC is only 2 grams heavier than the RC N-1, coming in at 388 versus 386 grams. And to actually fly the drone, you're going to need to put a phone on the RC N-1, and putting my relatively small Google Pixel 4 on it puts it up to around 550 grams and much larger than the DJI RC. So the DJI RC wins on size and weight. And next we have range. The DJI RC doesn't have any external antennas. All the antennas are built into the body of the controller, whereas the RC N-1 has antennas in the phone mount that you pull out, so you would expect it to have better range with those external antennas. And when I tested both remotes with the Air 2S in pretty challenging conditions, I got about 5,000 feet of range with the RC N-1 versus only around 4,000 feet with the DJI RC. Now keep in mind that in better conditions you'll get a longer range with both remotes, but point goes to the RC N-1 for better range. Next up is control stick quality. The RC N-1 has ball type control sticks that work decently well, but they do have somewhat uneven spring tension, whereas the DJI RC has separate mechanisms for the up and down and left and right controls for each stick, which gives a higher quality feel to the sticks and gives them a larger range of motion, which makes it easier to make fine adjustments and pull off complex moves. When I got the DJI RC, I wasn't expecting any difference in how the sticks feel, but I really like the action of the sticks on the DJI RC, and I found that it really does make a difference in how easy it is to get more complex drone shots. Next, we have buttons and dials. The RC N-1 has the power and return to home buttons on the front along with the flight mode switch, and then up next to the sticks on the right side there's a button to switch between photo and video modes, and on the left there's a customizable multifunction button. And then on the top there's a control wheel for the gimbal and a button to start and stop video recording and take photos depending on what mode you're in. The DJI RC on the other hand has a few more buttons and dials. Again, on the front we have the power and return to home buttons and the mode switch. And then on top we have one button for recording videos and a separate button for taking photos. Now if you want to, let's say, go from shooting videos to shooting photos, you have to press the photo button once to switch into photo mode and then press it again to take a photo. But it's still faster and more intuitive than having to press a separate button to switch between photo and video modes. And then behind the photo and video buttons there are 2 dials instead of just one. The left dial controls the gimbal tilt just like on the RC N-1, and the right dial can be customized to control different things like exposure or zoom. And then on the back of the controller there are 2 custom buttons that you can use for everything from landing lights to flipping the gimbal to using a combination with the second control wheel to adjust multiple settings depending on which button you're pushing. I do wish that the right control wheel was a rotating dial like on some of DJI's older remotes instead of a rocker like the gimbal control wheel, but all in all the RC Pro wins this category for a much better selection of tactile controls. Next up is setup time. I tested how long it takes to go from pulling the drone out of your backpack to being able to take off with each controller, and with the RC N-1 it took just 41 seconds to get in the air, while with the DJI RC it surprisingly took 2 seconds longer at 43 seconds. This is because the DJI RC takes quite a while to power on and load the operating system, and you can see that I actually turned the RC on before I started unfolding the drone so it could boot up while I did everything else. Now while the RC N-1 was slightly faster in this test, it wasn't entirely realistic because I didn't wait for GPS lock before takeoff, and I also had the drone and remotes partly ready to fly, so if you're waiting for GPS lock or if you need to screw in the control sticks on the remote or take off the gimbal cover or change batteries or adjust ND filters, you'll be able to get into the air just as fast, if not faster, with the DJI RC. So we'll call this category a tie. And next up, we have ease of use. As you can see from the previous test, while both remotes took about the same amount of time to set up, with the RC N-1, I was frantically setting things up as fast as I could the whole time, whereas with the DJI RC, I just had to power it on and leisurely unfold the drone, and then I could just enjoy the scenery, ponder life, and plan out my flight while everything powered up. And this is the biggest reason why I love the DJI RC. It's so much easier to pick up the drone and remote and go fly. You don't have to get your phone out of your pocket, make sure it's charged enough, pull out the phone holder, mess with the cable, connect it to the app, get rid of all the notifications, etc, etc, etc. And then do the reverse when you're done flying. And this added simplicity is really a game changer for me. It greatly improves the quality of the drone piloting experience and makes me want to go out and fly my drones a lot more. So big point to the DJI RC for ease of use. And next up is screen size. The DJI RC has a 5.5-inch screen, while the RC N-1 has whatever size screen the device that you use with it has. Now, a standard phone like iPhone 13 or 14 will have a slightly larger diagonal screen measurement, but most phone screens use an aspect ratio wider than 16:9, so you won't be able to fill all of the screen real estate with the live feed from the drone, so you actually end up with a larger image and usable area on the DJI RC. Now, technically, you could use an 8 or even 12-inch tablet with the RC N-1, but that is going to make the controller pretty imbalanced and hard to hold, so we'll call screen size a tie. And just important as screen size is screen brightness. The DJI RC's screen has a maximum brightness of 700 nits, whereas with the RC N-1, it's again going to depend on what phone you put on it. The latest flagship phones have a much higher than 700 nits peak brightness, but many of them, like the iPhones, can't maintain that maximum peak brightness for a long time. And comparing it to my older Google Pixel 4, the DJI RC's screen is significantly easier to see in direct sunlight. So we'll call this category a tie as well, because it really depends on what device you use. And next up is battery life. The DJI RC is rated for up to 4 hours of battery life, while the RC N-1 is rated at 6 hours, but that drops to 4 hours if you set it up to keep your phone charged while you fly. Again, from just having used both of them, the DJI RC's battery doesn't seem to last quite as long as the RC N-1, even with its phone charging feature turned on. And next we have compatibility. The RC N-1 is compatible with all DJI drones from the last few years, whereas the DJI RC is only compatible with the Mini 3, Mini 3 Pro, the Mavic 3 line, the Air 2S, and newer drones, and isn't compatible with the Air 2, Mini 2, and Mini 2 SE. This isn't going to be a big deal for most people because these are older drones that are becoming slightly outdated, but if you have one of these models, only the RC N-1 will be able to connect to it. Next is screen recording. This is something that might not matter to a lot of people, but I screen record my drone flights for tutorials quite frequently, and with the RC N-1, I have to screen record on my phone, which isn't ideal because it takes up storage on my phone and it's always a headache to transfer to my computer, whereas the DJI RC has a micro SD card slot on the bottom of the remote, so I can just stick a card in and screen record straight to the SD card and then download the footage from there onto my computer, just like from any other camera. So point to the DJI RC for making screen recording much more streamlined and efficient. Next up is third-party apps. With the RC N-1, you can use third-party apps on your phone like Lychee or Drone Deploy to fly your drone and add additional features like waypoints or mapping, but unfortunately the DJI RC does not allow you to install third-party apps, so you can only use the DJI Fly app to fly your drone. Now personally, this isn't a big deal because I almost never use third-party apps for shooting video, but for applications like mapping and generating 3D models, this could be a deal breaker. Next up is connectivity. With the RC N-1, you've got all the connectivity options your phone has, LTE and Wi-Fi, whereas the DJI RC only has the option to connect to Wi-Fi. And this is fine most of the time. You can connect the RC to Wi-Fi to do app and firmware updates and log into your DJI account, but it can be a pain to have to go find the Wi-Fi password and go into the settings and enter it on the remote, or have to create a hotspot with your phone instead of just having your phone already connected to everything. Now the upside of this is that it automatically disconnects from Wi-Fi when you take off to give you better range, and you'll never get a notification or call on the controller mid-flight. But nonetheless, point to the RC N-1 for better connectivity options. And finally, we have ergonomics. Which remote feels better to hold and use? Now this is going to be somewhat subjective, but to me the DJI RC feels a lot better in your hands. It has a deeper cutout on the back than the RC N-1, so you have a better grip on the sides of the controllers and more space for your fingers to go in the middle, and it also feels really well balanced with the built-in screen below the control sticks versus having your phone mounted on top, which makes the controller somewhat top heavy. So now for my final thoughts, which controller is overall better, and is the DJI RC worth the extra cost? According to the scoreboard, the DJI RC wins by just 1 point, but for me the benefits of not having to hassle around with attaching my phone to the controller every time I fly far outweigh any downsides of using the DJI RC over the RC N-1 and make it 100% worth the extra cost. It's really what I've always wanted flying drones to be. You just take it out of your bag, turn the drone and controller on, and you're ready to go. And I think it's really great that DJI has given us an option to be able to have that simplicity without spending more than many of the drones cost on an RC Pro. Now obviously it depends what your needs are. If you're doing something like 3D mapping where you need to use third-party apps, you'll have to use either the RC N-1 or move up to the $1,200 RC Pro. But for those of us who mainly do photography or shoot video with our drones, the DJI RC is a great deal. And speaking of shooting video, if you want to get epic cinematic shots like what you see in the DJI commercials and all the YouTube videos, you've got to have the right skills. And that's why I put together my 10-hour drone video course to take you beyond just owning a drone and knowing how to fly it, to mastering all the skills of camera settings, composition, lighting, editing, color grading, and so much more, so you can create professional cinematic drone videos. Or if you aren't ready to dive into the full course, I have a completely free 45-minute drone filmmaking training where I share my top 10 secrets of creating cinematic drone videos. And links to both of those are in the description. And if you've gotten value out of this video, you can click or tap the screen here to watch another one of our videos, and make sure to gently tap the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos just like this. Let me know in the comments what comparison you'd like to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.